Hi, scholars. Miss Ellerbeck and I are really excited to introduce you to a new book that we are going to be starting to read in class tomorrow. It's called The Circuit, and it's stories from the life of a migrant child, written by Francisco Jimenez. The Circuit is a historical fiction book, and it's short stories told by a migrant worker boy. Today and tomorrow, you're going to be watching some videos that will help give you some background knowledge about the time and about the people and about the place that this story is set in. Let's start with the time. When does this story happen? So this story takes place in the 20th century, which is the 1900s. So this is a timeline of the 20th century, and here we are in the 21st century. We're in 2015, so we're not even on this timeline. This story takes place in the 1940s after World War II. So here's World War II. So our story in The Circuit takes place in the 1940s and the 1950s as well. In this story, you're going to learn a lot about migrant workers, and some of you may already know a lot about migrant workers. A migrant worker is a person who moves wherever there is work. So in our book, the migrant workers in California work on farms. When the season for growing one crop is over, the migrant workers move to the next place where they can find a new job. So for example, a migrant worker would pick strawberries from June to August. The migrant worker would then move to a new farm many hours away where grapes were ready to be picked. Once the grape season was finished in October, the migrant worker would move to a farm several hours away and would pick cotton until December. Migrant workers worked very hard in the fields, and they came from many different parts of the world. There were Japanese migrant workers from Mexico, migrant workers from the eastern part of the United States, black migrant workers, white migrant workers as well. This is a picture of some migrant workers working in a strawberry field in California. So you can see how there are many, many people, and they're walking up and down these rows picking the strawberries in the fields. Another word that you'll hear as we're reading our book, The Circuit, is the word circuit. A circuit is a path or a route, and a circuit is a circle or in a circle pattern. So a circuit is a path or a route that's in a circle pattern. In our book, when we read about the circuit, it is the route that migrant workers took as they traveled to different farms. The circuit is set in the state of California. Here's California right here. And California is well known because you can grow many different kinds of crops in California. The weather is perfect for growing berries, for growing grapes, for growing cotton. Many different kinds of crops can be grown in California. So when the migrant workers went on a circuit in California, it might look something like this. They might start out picking grapes in Northern California in October, and then in December they might move down to where cotton was growing, and they would pick cotton for several months. And then once they finished picking cotton, they would move to the next area where the next crop, maybe apples or oranges, was ready to be picked. And then they would move to the next place where another crop was ready to be fixed. So the migrant workers will travel in a circuit, in a circle, over the course of a year. So they're going to just travel wherever the crops are ready to be picked. They'll go and they'll live there for a couple of months, pick the crops, and then move to another place. Now we're going to watch a quick video of California agriculture. Agriculture means the land and the crops that are grown on the land and the animals. And we're going to watch to learn a little bit about the agriculture in California because in our book, The Circuit, the migrant workers depend on the agriculture in California for their jobs. In our book, The Circuit, the main character and his family are going to travel from their home in Mexico. And they're going to cross the border into California where they are going to become migrant workers and work the circuit. Their home in Mexico and many people's homes in Mexico at that time, they did not have access to education and they didn't have the kind of life that they wanted for their family. So they wanted to move to America because they felt like their life in America would be better for their children. There are different ways to get to America. Sometimes they would have papers and would be able to cross the border, but many times because they had to come with their families and were trying to escape the poverty in Mexico, they would just cross the border. In our story, the family crosses the border at a border crossing that probably looked a little bit like this, where Mexico was on one side and America was on the other side, and they crawled under the fence to get to the United States. The life of migrant workers was very difficult, and we're going to be learning a little bit more about that tomorrow. But for today, I just want to show you a couple pictures so that you can have some images of what life would have been like. So here's a picture of a migrant family, and the father is working in the fields, and you can see that the little boy is out with his father. Many of the migrant children weren't able to go to school all of the time because their families moved a lot, so they would have to go to school just whenever they were in one place for a longer period of time. This is a picture of some migrant workers who are probably heading off to the fields to work for the day. You can see that there's not a lot of trees in this area. This would have been a pretty dry area, so they may have been picking cotton in this area. This is a picture of a migrant child and his baby brother or sister. They're in the bucket. A lot of times the older migrant children would have to babysit the younger migrant children while their parents went to work in the fields. So this was another reason sometimes that children weren't able to go to school because they had to stay back and take care of their little brothers and sisters while their parents went to work in the fields. This is a picture of a migrant family's home. The migrant families would move from farm to farm, and so sometimes, many times, the farms would have homes that were already constructed, but the homes, as you can see in this picture, they weren't very good homes. There were lots of holes in the walls. Usually the floors were made out of dirt. There were holes in the ceilings, so the migrant workers had to try to make the best house that they could in a short amount of time. So a lot of times they would take newspapers and they would hang newspapers over the holes in the wall so that they would stay warm and they could try to keep the animals out at night. Tomorrow, when you come back to your station and your workshop station, you're going to be learning some more about migrant life in America and especially migrant life during the time of the circuit. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'm looking forward to learning more about migrant workers and their life in America with you.